Hello, and welcome to our lesson on implementing risk responses and monitoring risk. This segment will cover managing changes due to adjusting risk responses. The process of adjusting risk responses during risk execution, monitoring, and controlling significantly impacts managing changes, particularly within the change control process. Adjusting risk responses may uncover new risks or reveal changes in the project environment that necessitate project scope, schedule, or budget modifications. These changes may be identified during the monitoring and controlling phase as project teams observe the effectiveness of implemented risk responses. As project teams identify changes resulting from adjusted risk responses, they must assess the potential impacts on project objectives, constraints, and stakeholder requirements. This assessment involves evaluating the magnitude and significance of the changes and determining whether they warrant formal change requests. A change request form is usually used in this process, where the team members perform the change assessment, log it into the change request form, and send it for review and approval. The change control process is a structured and formal mechanism used in project management to review, evaluate, and approve changes to the project baseline. This process ensures that any project scope, schedule, or budget modifications are thoroughly analyzed and assessed for their potential impacts on project objectives, constraints, and stakeholders. When adjusting risk responses, project teams may encounter changes that necessitate documentation, analysis, and approval through the change control process. The change control process in the context of adjusting risk responses is as follows. Documentation of changes. When adjusting risk responses, project teams must document the reasons for the change, the proposed modifications, and the anticipated impacts on the project. This documentation clearly records the change request and serves as the basis for further evaluation and analysis. Impact analysis. Adjusting risk responses may have ripple effects on various aspects of the project, including scope, schedule, budget, and resource allocation. Project teams conduct a thorough impact analysis to assess the potential consequences of the proposed changes and determine their feasibility and implications for project objectives. Evaluation of alternatives. In some cases, adjusting risk responses may involve evaluating alternative approaches or mitigation strategies to address emerging risks. Project teams explore different options and consider their advantages, disadvantages, and potential trade-offs before deciding the most appropriate course of action. Approval process. Once the change request is documented, analyzed, and evaluated, it is submitted for approval through the change control process. The change request is typically reviewed by a designated change control board or committee responsible for assessing its impact on the project and deciding whether to approve, reject, or defer the proposed changes. Communication and stakeholder engagement. Throughout the change control process, project teams engage with stakeholders to communicate updates, solicit feedback, and address concerns related to the proposed changes. Transparent communication ensures that stakeholders are informed about the reasons for the change, its potential impacts, and the decision-making process involved in approving or rejecting the change request. Alignment with project goals and objectives. The overarching goal of the change control process is to ensure that any changes made to the project baseline are aligned with project goals, objectives, and stakeholder requirements. Project teams assess the potential impacts of adjusting risk responses on project success criteria and ensure that approved changes contribute to the overall project success. The change control process provides a systematic framework for reviewing, evaluating, and approving changes to the project baseline, including those resulting from adjusting risk responses. By following this process, project teams can ensure that changes are documented, analyzed, and approved in a structured manner, thereby minimizing disruptions and maintaining alignment with project goals and objectives. Approved change requests require replanning for some parts of the project, which might impact the three baselines of scope, schedule, and budget. The impact of the change request must be integrated into the project baselines and other documents, including updates to, if needed, Project Work Breakdown Structure, WBS, baseline schedule, baseline scope, baseline budget, risk register. This ensures that the plan of record accurately reflects the project's current state and serves as a benchmark for evaluating project progress and performance. A change request is a formal document submitted to the project sponsor or relevant stakeholders to request modifications to project deliverables, processes, or other aspects of the project. Change requests typically include details such as the rationale for the proposed change, the impact on project objectives, potential risks, required resources, and any supporting documentation. Change requests are subject to review and approval or rejection by relevant stakeholders, including project sponsors, clients, and project managers, to ensure that proposed changes align with project goals and do not adversely affect project scope, schedule, budget, or quality. The components of a change request typically include the following: description of change. Provide a clear and concise description of the proposed change, including what aspect of the project is affected and the nature of the modification. Rationale. An explanation of why the change is necessary or desirable. This may include factors such as evolving project requirements, unforeseen challenges, stakeholder feedback, or new opportunities. Impact assessment. This evaluation evaluates how the proposed change will affect various aspects of the project, such as scope, schedule, budget, quality, resources, risks, and stakeholders. This assessment helps stakeholders understand the consequences of the change and make informed decisions. Risk analysis. Identify and analyze potential risks associated with the change, including any mitigation strategies or contingency plans to address them. Approval criteria. Criteria or thresholds that must be met for the change to be approved, such as stakeholder consensus, alignment with project objectives, or compliance with organizational policies. Supporting documentation, any relevant documents, data, analyses, or references that support the change request and provide additional context or justification. These components collectively provide a comprehensive overview of the proposed change, enabling stakeholders to evaluate its merits, assess its impact, and decide whether to approve, reject, or defer the change. A change log, also known as a change register or change control log, is a document or database that records and tracks all changes made to a project over its lifecycle. The change log captures information about each change request, including its unique identifier, description, status, priority, proposed resolution, approval status, implementation details, and associated comments or notes. The change log serves as a centralized repository for documenting and managing changes, providing a comprehensive audit trail of all modifications made to the project. It enables project stakeholders to monitor the status of change requests, track changes over time, and ensure that all changes are properly documented, reviewed, approved, and implemented by project requirements and procedures. This is the end of this segment of our lesson. In the next segment, we shall discuss tools and techniques utilized in implementing risk responses and monitoring risks. This course is presented to you by South Europe College. Thank you for listening, and see you on our next segment.